participation in a very special day. Today is 101 birth anniversary of the Dharampal ji, and we are nurturing this dialogue on the very auspicious occasion that is birthday of his. And on behalf of Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming, I, Randhir Kumar Gautam, welcome all of you to attend today's Swadhyay Sahchakra dialogue. It is a great pleasure to welcome Shri Pawan Kumar Gupta ji, who is a great reader of Dharampal ji's work and also co-nurturer of his legacy. I welcome Professor Ananta Giri, moderator of today's session and honorary trustee of Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming. I welcome Dr. Christian Bartol from Germany. I welcome Professor Gyan Gului from Italy. I welcome Minati Pradhan ji and all friends co-present here, and all the viewers both on Zoom platform and Facebook platform. Let me give a brief introduction to our Swadhyay Sahchakra, that is Circle of Co-Learning and Mutual Studies, which is an initiative of studying and learning together, self, culture, societies, and the world. Friends associated with this are eager to walk and mediate with new horizons of thinking and new movements of social cultural change at work in our contemporary world. We study seekers such as Sri Aurobindo, Mahatma Gandhi, Chitranjan Das, a creative soul from Orissa, and many others from around the world. We also present our own writings and reflect upon our creativity together. We invite people from different fields of life to share their lives, vision, sadhana, and a struggle for creating this world full of justice, equality, fraternity. So in the dialogue, we invite every Sunday, we organize every Sunday for the Sahchakra dialogue, sometimes on Wednesday also. So today is very a special day, as you know. And the topic of today's talk is remembering Dharampal ji and challenges of understanding India and the world. As you know, Dharampal ji is a unique kind of a scholar. Without having any support of any organization, he single-handedly done excellent work and miracle work, I would say, in order to give a glimpse of unknown history. And that is, his work itself is a kind of knowledge movement also. It is beyond the indigenous knowledge movement, because his knowledge has emancipatory character. And we have just passed his birth century, but we are feeling his work is becoming more and more relevant with the passage of time. So giving a kind of brief introduction of the topic, I would like to invite Professor Ananta Giri, moderator of today's session, to kindly give a brief introduction of the topic and the issue, and then we will listen Shri Pawan Kumar Gupta ji. Yes, Professor Giri, over to you.
Thank you so much, dear Randhir, and thank you, dear and respected Pawan Bhai, Shri Pawan Gupta ji, and it's a joy to be together. I feel co-presence with Pawan Bhai as it was in the beautiful summer night in your home in Mussoorie. And as we are with Sri Dharampal ji today, we feel his immortal presence. And I also have the joy of meeting with Dharampal ji in Basant Nagar, Chennai, with Dr. M.D. Srinivas and Dr. J.K. Bajaj in 1990. And Dr. Bajaj had very kindly presented me Dharampal's book, Bharatiya Chitta Manakala, way back in 1996 or so. And let us begin our conversation with a paragraph from this text, which is part of volume 5 that Pawan Bhai has nurtured, 5 volumes of collected writings of Sri Dharampal ji. And in volume 5, in page 170, Dharampal ji writes, in a fascinating context of the Valmiki Ramayana, Sita questions Sri Rama about the violent tendencies that she discerns arising in him. And then she continues to ask Rama, the bearing of arms and retirement to the forest, practice of war and the exercise of asceticism are opposed to each other. Let us therefore honor the moral code that pertains to peace. Based on that, this conversation, Dharampal ji is very important, it's a very important way of thinking about and with India. And he's arguing that questioning is one of the important ways of being Indian. Therefore, Bharatiya Chitta Manakala, with all the challenges that we have, the burden of colonialism, forgetfulness, and everything, I think the regeneration of Bharatiya Chitta Manaha is to regenerate this questioning that Sita is doing to Rama. And Dharampalji talks about tapas. And what is the tapasya of questioning? And in this text, Dharampalji is challenging us that how the understanding itself is difficult. And this is a conversation that Pawan Bhai also had heightened during our meeting, because our present moment itself, where we stand in terms of space and time, we are already so produced by modernity that we really cannot understand the pre-modern life world. And it is therefore, how do we understand? And here, Dharampalji challenges us to understand the limits of Indology and anthropology. And basically, the limits of Indology and anthropology is mainly an outsider perspective. And he so insightfully presents Claude Lévi-Strauss, the great anthropologist, where Lévi-Strauss himself is saying that how anthropology is really, imprisoned within colonialism, and therefore we must transform such an anthropology. One conversation that Dharampalji reports in this booklet is the conversation between governor of Karnataka or Andhra Pradesh, and I think Andhra Pradesh, and the Swamiji in Sringeri. And when the Swamiji started talking about Varna Vyavastha, then the governor said that please do not talk about it. And Dharampal, we asked this question that how is that, that the Swami cannot talk about Varna Vyavastha. I think that is also a critical point to think with Dharampalji, because in the text itself, Dharampalji says, bringing many dialogues, that the Varna is really a product of Karma and Guna. But what is the condition of Varna Vyavastha today? How do we understand India, Bharatiya Chitta Manakala, with the critical challenge for the moment? Let us have a conversation between Dharampal and Ambedkar, in terms of the question of caste, and both Varna through qualities and karma, but also the many kind of dehumanization that is happening. And it is in that sense that this whole Bharatiya Chitta Manakala, as Dharampal is saying, that we are already interlinked with the West, Western modernity. Therefore, how do we cultivate a way of realizing India and the world, where while the West is part of us, but we are not imprisoned by that. Therefore, we need to cultivate what might be called a multi-topial hermeneutics and a multi-temporal hermeneutics, India and the world, with our one multiple traditions, even traditions which are not destroyed by Western colonial modernity. Therefore, we need to move across multiple spaces. and multiple temporality. And my final humble submission is, as Dharampal ji has worked and meditated with Gandhi, and therefore the challenge of working and meditating with Dharampal ji today in the context of the great battle that is going on in our mind and in our politics between Hindutva and Hind Swaraj. And as Dharampal ji is also making a deep journey to understand India, we also need to explore what would be a possible kind of dialogue between Dharampal ji and Sri Aurobindo. It seems, with my ignorance, it seems that I would like to be enlightened by Pawan Bhai. Dharampal journey with Sri Aurobindo, for example, if any. So with some of these offerings, with my humble, submission. So it is a joy to, to listen to Pawan Bhai, please.
Well, namaste to everyone. Professor Anant Kumar and Randhir Gautam ji for inviting me here. I've just come back a couple of hours after 7 hours of traveling, and I was told about this program only in the afternoon. So I'll try and do my best. First of all, let me say that I won't claim that this is what Dharampal meant. I can only claim that this is my understanding of Dharampal. When you see Gautam Buddha's Pali shlokas, all of them start with 3 words, Evam me sutang, which means, thus I heard. The people who are reciting it, or people who memorized it, they made a promise to themselves that we will never say this is what Buddha said. We will start by saying that this is what I heard. Whether Buddha said this or said something else, we don't know, but this is what I heard. So I am saying the same thing, that what I'm going to say is my understanding of Dharampal. This is not being defensive or being unnecessarily humble. This is a fact. I think to understand Dharampal, it is important to know that Dharampal was not a trained academician. He was not even a graduate in the formal sense. So his research was not a normal research. It was not a PhD research. It was not to write a book kind of a research. It was a genuine research in the sense that certain things struck him. And it was a deep anguish which led him to go on this journey. I won't go into the details, but just to give you a glimpse, he was trying to understand the impact of the newly introduced Panchayati Raj system in India in the late 50s. I think it was around 56, 57 or thereabouts. So he went into the villages of Rajasthan to understand how the newly introduced system was functioning. And it was sheer chance that he stumbled upon something. He realized over there that there were 2 panchayats functioning there. There was the Sarkari Panchayat or the government Panchayat, and there was the traditional Panchayat, which they used to call Bis Biswa Panchayat. And the prestige was for the Bis Biswa Panchayat. They had a certain respect for that Panchayat. The government Panchayat was merely to sort of, because it was an imposition and they had to follow the rules. So it was more like, going with what the government required. But the reputation or what they believed in was their own traditional Panchayat. And it had a say in all matters over there. So this was the revelation for Dharampal, that there is an existence of this traditional Panchayat, and it has so much of clout. And what surprised him even more, that people like him sitting in Delhi and in so-called educated classes, they have no inkling that such a thing exists. And it was not an isolated case. So I think this led him, and it came as a shock that people like me, the educated classes, do not know my own country. And another thing happened. I don't know when it happened exactly, but around that time, many things must have happened. But one more thing which happened was that while looking at Gandhiji's correspondences, he saw one, somewhere Gandhiji said, this was in 1931, when Gandhiji was attending the second roundtable conference in London. He happened to say something to the effect that India was far more educated 100 years ago than it is today. And the British dug at this beautiful tree. He gave kind of this was a upama or an allegory that he gave to the beautiful system of education that existed in India. And he said that the British dug at the roots and left the roots exposed. And in due course of time, the beautiful tree withered away. And some English gentleman who read this, he wrote to Gandhiji that how can you make some things, to the effect that you're making a very irresponsible statement, and this is not true, and India was educated by the British. There was no education before that. So Gandhi's response to that was that look into your own records to validate what I'm saying, to verify what I'm saying. When Dharampalji read this, then perhaps he must have thought that if Gandhi is saying something like this, then there must be in the British records. So I'm just giving you a few things which led him to a kind of inkling that what we imagine of India's past is perhaps not the same as what it actually was. And this led him to do his research. And then, of course, one thing happened after another. The whole collected works of Dharampal, you can see that beautiful tree, science, technology. Now I'm cutting this is just a preamble. Now I'm basically, the point I'm trying to make here is that Dharampal's search was a genuine search to understand his own country and to understand that why are we not today functioning as a robust society, as a functioning society? Why are things the way they are even after 50, 60 years of independence? And this, I think this anguish, this pain, this concern stayed with him till his last days. So in a way, his research never stopped. We think that those 5 books are the end of his research, or few more things which published or unpublished. But I think he was constantly struggling with this. Now, coming to the point that I want to, that I sort of look at his work in at least three broad categories. One is where the books like The Beautiful Tree, Science, Technology fall, where he is able to bring out what were the systems which are prevailing in India at that time. The system of education, the kind of technology which existed here, the kind of science which existed in India, these kind of things which he has documented very well from the British records. This in itself is extremely important, because the narrative which has been created over the years, even after independence, is something entirely different. We have a very different picture of India's past from what we get when we read Dharampal's records, which have been not like, he has not done his own research in that sense. He has reproduced British records. So they cannot be challenged in the sense that it is an interpretation. It is not an interpretation. Normally, history is, in a way, interpretation. But this is a reproduction of British record. This also has to be kept in mind. The second part, which is very important of Dharampal's work, is where he is trying to understand the British mind. And he's trying to understand the British mind. He's trying to understand the way they do things and the way they perceive things. Now, this is important. We need to keep in mind that perception is extremely important in the way you decide. You take your decisions based on the way you perceive. So there is the British way or the Western way of perceiving things, and there's an Indian way of perceiving things. They could be entirely different in some cases, not every time or in every situation, but in many places. So he's trying to really get behind the British mind to understand how it operated, how it perceived, how it strategized. And this is also very important. Even today, it is very relevant. In this, if you want to understand this, I would say a book called, which Sid has published, called Rediscovering India is an important document. Then this was not enough because he was still struggling with the issue that what was it that was there in India which made us tick, which led to something so beautiful as these 4 lakh, 5 lakh schools in India, for which we have the records, or which led to these kind of, scientific innovations which happened in India. So what was it and what is missing today? And I think that led him to write something like Bharatiya Chitmanaska. So I think somewhere he came to this kind of a, well, I'm very hesitatingly use the word conclusion, but yes, some kind of a conclusion that perhaps we had lost touch with our roots. We have become alienated with our own roots. The way India operated, we have forgotten that. There's a Vismriti. We don't remember that anymore. And this uprooting from our basic foundational, civilizational foundations has perhaps led to a state where we are neither here, neither are we fully westernized, nor there. And this has made us into some kind of a very unstable kind of people who do not know where to go, how to go about things. So we are still struggling. Bharatiya Chitmanaska is one of the most important documents of Dharampal. There's no doubt about it. But here I would like to bring 2 more things I won't like to touch upon. I'll come back to Bharatiya Chitmanaska. One is that somewhere I think Dharampal was reaching that India, the way the Indian mind works, especially the ordinary Indian mind works, and the way the Western mind works are completely different. And our educated class, in their eagerness to imitate the West, they have forgotten their basic moorings completely. And this class is in power. It doesn't matter which political class is in power, but this class as a whole, whether from left to the right, all the educated classes is completely alienated from their roots. And this is the main problem. So Dharampal had a lot of respect for the ordinary Indian. And he was struggling how to make understand this ordinary Indian mind. And he felt that if Indian systems, the systems under which we operate, if these systems are in alignment with the ordinary Indian mind, or the way the ordinary Indian takes his decisions, the values that the ordinary Indian places at a high pedestal, and those are important for the ordinary Indian mind. If we can get aligned with that, then India will be a functioning society once again. This is what he felt somewhere. But what was coming in the way was how to go about doing that. This was the challenge, because in this, he also pointed out something very important. And this is often gets missing from when we are talking about Dharampal. Dharampal dug out some documents, and in those documents, there is a conversation which happens between the American president, Franklin Roosevelt, and the British ambassador to America. This is in 1942. This conversation is happening in White House. And Franklin Roosevelt is telling the ambassador that when you're going to give independence to India is really your business. I don't want to meddle in it. I'm not quoting him verbatim, but something to that effect. Then he says, but make sure that whenever India gets its independence, that India stays in the Western orbit. I think this is a major statement, and Dharampal, you in private conversations, in casual conversations, often used to refer to this. That what does it mean? We need to understand what it means. What does it mean when he says Western orbit? Number one. And why is it so important for the American president who's telling the British ambassador that make sure India stays in the Western? Now, when I look at it, I can't help but connect a few dots. And I feel that Pandit Nehru becoming the first Prime Minister of India was part of the strategy to make sure that India stays in the Western orbit. This Western orbit basically means to me that Indian systems, the way India operates, is in alignment with the way the Western mind operates, Western world operates. So the same systems are over here. India should not never get connected with its own original mind, the ordinary Indian mind. Because if it gets connected with the original mind, that something massive can happen and India can become very powerful. Now, I'll again try and connect something. If you look at the old, the European travelers have been coming to India from the 16th century onwards, after Vasco da Gama, 1498. After that, there's a stream of visitors coming from Europe. They could be French, they could be English, they could be Spaniards, they could be Dutch, they could be Portuguese. These people are coming, Italians, and they are writing their diaries. If you look at those diaries, one thing which is common is that they are not able to make sense out of India. What is it that they are not able to make out? See, one thing that troubles them is that in Europe, the elite of Europe and the ordinary people of Europe, there's a massive difference between the elite and the ordinary in Europe. In the way they dress, in the way they behave, in the way they eat, everything. For instance, the elite of Europe would be wearing perhaps more clothes than are needed. They would wear extra clothes. The ordinary people would wear just about, just to survive the cold. The elite would wear boots, whereas the ordinary European would wear probably sandals or shoes. The elite would ride a buggy. The ordinary will walk. In India, the Indian elite, be it the Raja or be it a big Vidwan, they are bare-chested. They don't wear anything above the waist. Whether it is an ordinary Indian or it is an elite Indian. The ordinary Indian also walks barefoot. The elite also walks barefoot. The ordinary Indian also sleeps on a chatai. The elite also sleeps on a chatai. So there's very little difference in terms of lifestyle between the elite and the ordinary Indian. This is just one thing that I'm telling. There are other things, like there are villages where people don't put locks in their houses. There is no one steals. And if anything gets lost, then next day we're pretty sure that it will be, people will find it under the the central, there's a tree, there's a banyan tree or there's a peepal tree, and you will find your lost item will be placed there. So there is no one steals. There is a quotation of a judge in Patna High Court, very late. I think it is 19th century. He is saying that what kind of a country is this, that after taking oath on the Gita or the Quran, these people would rather hang themselves than tell a lie. He's surprised at this, that after they've taken oath on Gita or Quran, they will not tell a lie, even if they're hanged. So, in many ways, they are not able to make sense out of this country. And mind you, there's no one steals, no one tells a lie. All these things are not out of fear. It is not because they're afraid of their kings or they're afraid of getting punished. They are not doing it. And the purpose is something completely different. I mean, the motivation is completely different. The reason is completely different. It is not fear of the law. So these things are very new and they cannot make sense out of this Indian society. And I think this fear continues till date. When President Roosevelt is saying that make sure that India stays in the Western orbit, it is the same thing. This, even today, I dare to say that, when we find that New York Times or the BBC, and I'm not talking pro-Modi or anti-Modi, but you find that they have a certain patronizing attitude towards India, all the Western media, and they have a sense of superiority, and they want to dictate that what is democracy, what are human rights, what are women's rights. There's a certain sense of superiority that they don't even question, and they want to sort of persuade you to follow their path. They assume that is the only path. So, but I think that we need to see that this unipolar world, which has been made by the West in the last 70, 100 years, perhaps this is a time when we need to chalk out our own path. We should be advocating about a multipolar world. There is no one way of looking at the world. There's no one way of doing things. The right and wrong can be decided by Indian people based on their own principles and ethos, based on their own civilizational understanding. But what is coming in the way is we, the educated people. And this is what was troubling Dharampal a lot. In Bharatiya Chitmanaskal, he says that this is not our century. Now, when he makes a statement like this, that this 20th century, because this was written in 20th century, this 20th century is not our century. Now, most people that I've spoken to, they think, someone is talking.
Yes,
this 20th century.
Sorry, I request all friends to mute them, please. Right? Thank you. Please continue, Pawanji.
This 20th century, most people, when they read this statement of Dharampal in Bharatiya Chitmanaskal, that this century is not our century, I think they interpret it to mean that we have got left behind. and we have to enhance our pace of development to make it our century or to become developed, that kind of a thing. But I think what Dharampal is saying is something else. He is saying this is not our century, meaning we are living in someone else's world. We are living according to someone else's value system. We are not living according to our own value systems, not according to our civilizational understanding. We have been either forced or we have been fooled to live according to someone else's diktat. This is what he means. So what is our way of living is something that we'll have to learn from the two sources that he talks about. One is our ordinary people, whom we have, now we don't understand them. I'm telling you from my own experience that it took me a long time to talk to the ordinary Indian, because I am an educated person, quote unquote educated. And we, the educated people, we talk in a transactional style. We talk in a question-answer mode, often. So we ask a question and we expect a response from the other. But our ordinary, so-called uneducated people are not used to this style. Their style is storytelling style. So if you narrate something which you have experienced, then they will connect with that and they will tell their own story. For instance, if you say, when I become sick, when I have fever, I do this and this and this. Then they'll say, oh, but we do this and this and this. They will connect with this. But if you ask them, when you have fever, what do you do? Then they will say, oh, we don't, or we just sleep, or we just rest, or something like that. Because they are not used to this transactional style of talking. They try and connect things. वो जोड़ते हैं चीजों, एक चीज से दूसरी चीज को जोड़ते हैं, जो गप का, किस्से का स्टाइल होता है. Now it took me a long time to understand this. So the point is, one is that we have to connect with our ordinary people and try to see where they are coming from. What are their value system? Whether we agree with it or we don't agree with it is a secondary thing. But let's at least try and understand them. I'll give you an example. When I was running schools in Himalayas, so at that time we did a small research. When we used to ask our people, the villagers, do you want to send your children to school? We did not find a single person saying no. They all said, yes, we want to send our children to school. But when we asked them a different question, are you happy with the child who's going to school? Then they said, no, no, no. The child has got ruined after going to school. He is neither here nor there. वो ना घर का रहा, ना घाट का रहा. Now see the two questions asked to the same person, and look at the response. It's it's not opposite, but it's almost diametrically opposite, the two responses. In one, he's saying, yes, we would like to send the child to school. In the other, is saying the child going to school has got completely ruined. Now, mostly what happens is, we the educated only ask the first question. We only ask, do you want to send your child to school? Because we have an assumption that, of course, that you must send the child to school. We don't even consider that school may not be the best thing for the child. That is not a question that we are struggling with at all. So we completely ignore that question. This is just one example. I can give you several such examples. We have done 2-3 research which were very important. So what I'm saying is, our ordinary people and we the educated, maybe we look the same, maybe we speak the same language, but our value systems have become different. Our basic assumptions have become different. And we'll have to work very hard to try and understand them and make them comfortable, not in the patronizing way, but really look at them with respect. I'll give another example here. Gandhiji, when he was going to meet the Raja of Travancore in 1930, very well, when he was going there, he stopped his car on the way because there were some farmers working in the farm there. And he got down off the car and he went to one farmer and he asked the farmer, who is your king? Tumhara Raja kaun hai? And the farmer left his work, he got up and he pointed towards the sky and he said, I don't know, but the real king is that. Asli Raja to wo hai. Now, had I been in Gandhiji's place, my reaction would have been that this guy doesn't even know the name of his king. He should go to school. He should know some general knowledge, right? But Gandhiji's response is, my God, he doesn't care for his king. He cares for that, the God out there, and therefore he's fearless. He doesn't care for his king. And I have to do very little work to make this man fearless. He can even fight the British because he doesn't care for the mortal being. So this is the interpretation of Mahatma Gandhi. And the other would have, the normal interpretation of the educated would have been that he should go to school. So the point I'm trying to make is, Dharampal in Bharatiya Chitmanaskal is telling us that we need to connect with our people to understand how they look at things. This is one. The number two he's saying is that we need to also see, I mean, towards the end of his life, he was very concerned and he started talking about looking at India for how the world operated 500 years earlier, before the British, this European invasion started. How was world operating at that time? So he discovered that there was a Chinese ship captain by the name Zheng Ho. Zheng Ho used to come to Cochin very regularly. Between 1405 and 1420, these 15 years, Zheng Ho came at least 7 to 8 times with 300 ships in his command, 300 ships. Each ship would be carrying about 100 people. So 30,000 people would be coming to India, parking themselves in Cochin and staying there for months on end. They did not come here to fight, wage a war. They did not even come to do trading, it seems. They used to just come here. We don't know much about it. The point is that Dharampal started feeling that the world before European invasion was a very, very different world. Not in terms of material attributes and science and technology, but the way we behaved, way we dealt with the other human being. Today, one nation deals with another nation either to wage a war or for trading. There's no other this. So he felt that we perhaps need to go back and see how we were operating at that time, and perhaps we would get some clues into our own psyche, deep down what India was like or what India truly is like. And he felt that if we get connected with that, then perhaps India will rise once again. One more thing that he felt was very important was that we should look into our ऐतिहासिक scriptures, not historical scriptures, ऐतिहासिc scriptures, which means things like Mahabharata and Ramayana and things like Purans. And especially look at where two people are having a deep conversation. Like, let's say, a conversation between Bhrigu and Bharadwaj, or Kakbhushandi and Bhrigu, or Narad and someone, or Yudhishthir and Krishna, or Bhishma and Yudhishthir, where two people are having serious conversation about life and philosophy. And he felt that if we look at those conversations, then we perhaps would come to understand what this country is all about. what are the foundations on which we take our decisions. And that is important. So this is what I feel that, Dharampal is extremely important if we want India to chalk out its own path, not because of out of a sense of zingoism or nationalism, but because that's the way we are. This notion that all people are absolutely alike, I think this needs to be questioned. Dharampal used to question it. We may look alike, we may be alike in many things, but we are also different in many ways. And that's very obvious. Sometimes a person a Westerner makes a joke and we can't understand it. And sometimes we are making a joke and a Western person cannot understand it. He doesn't find it very funny, but we find it very funny. What is it that makes us different? This is important. What makes us alike and what makes us different, both are important. I think we focus too much on one, that we are all alike. We are not all alike. And I'm not saying that we are superior. I'm not saying they are superior. We are just different. So we need to understand who we are and try and connect with this. This is what I think essentially Dharampalji was struggling with. I think I'll stop here for the time being. If there are any questions, I'll take them.
Thank you so much, Pawan bhai. Thank you, Pawanji. Now we invite thoughts, reflections, please. And maybe we would gather questions, thoughts together, and towards the end, you can kindly come. So to initiate the conversation, so I invite Professor Gita Dharampal, please. Okay, I think she's not around. Then any other friend, please? We have Arundhati Jena. Would you like to speak, please?
Good evening, everyone, and pranam. I just want to share my thought. After so much of suffering,
would you mind putting on your video so that we can see you?
After so much of struggle, after so much of suffering, by pranam, everyone. So much of suffering by the Indian under the British rule and the other rulers, they were not the same. They become insecure by the plunder of the wealth, by being evicted from their own land, by the heavy tax burden. So they were not the same. So the changes we perceive in later stages are one by one the outcome of their own frustration, own anger, and everything. So it is to be the spirituality, the Indian nationality. We have to actually the national spirit is among the can only be cultivated when we are spiritually alive. But there are so much of suffering that they lost their spirit, and so much of negativity entered to the society. Now also we can Kangaroo Court. What kind of judgments they are passing, or they are ruling upon the people when there is a judiciary system. There was also zamindari system. The people were people suffered under them also. Sometimes we can say that the zamindars also the byproduct of the plundering of the wealth, and they were made insecure and by the tax burden and everything. So the root causes are many. We can't and also the rigorous caste system. And even in my childhood, I was joined to some other village, not my village. I saw ki there somebody has theft something, and he was tied to a pole, and was beaten, and the salt was thrown at him. And there was capital punishment, like small incidents. So
Okay, so namaste Arundhati.
I mean,
Arundhati Appa, maybe you have kindly said we have limited time, so we'll listen to you again. We got your initial point. Okay, so thank you. So now, Puneet, please.
Yeah. Thank
now
you so much, Anandji.
Yes.
Thank you, Professor Pawan, for that enlightening lecture. So it's not really a question, but a suggestion that I wanted from you. When I was reading about Dharampal, and I realized, the legacy of Dharampal and how it should be propagated and should be spread today. I was, in the light of how Antonio Gramsci talks about the organic intellectuals. And I was thinking about how these organic intellectuals could be created today, who would talk about the legacy of Dharampal and who would see the legacy of Dharampal in that light today. But today's time, it is, I'm going a bit political, but it is important to highlight. But today's time, whenever we talk about going back to the past glory, and the civilizational greatness we talk about, and the things that the ultra right wing is doing right now in the name of going to the past, in the name of Hindu Rashtra or Ram Rajya, the violence that has been inflicted on the minorities, the violence on the women, the violence on the Shudras. How would it's a bit difficult for me to interact with my friends from maybe from the left on also to the liberals. Whenever I talked about Dharampal, they see it with a bit of doubt that what is my real intention. So how do I present my ideas in a way, because I know that Dharampal is not what the right is propagating it to be. So how would I clear that scene? How would I clear that ground and to stabilize the image of Dharampal, or let's say Gandhi, in that light,
Yeah.
in that manner, what we want to achieve?
See, all
Thank
I
you.
would say is that
What I
time is very
request,
short.
Pawan Bhai, if you could just, we will collect a few more questions.
Okay. How much time we have? I think it's already 10. That's what.
Huh. Okay, just maybe one question. I think, yeah, very quickly. So, Minati, please.
Hello, I think I'm audible. Hello, good evening, everyone. Today I'm actually enlightened so much about.
Would you
Dharampal.
put your video, please? So that we can see.
Yeah, and as I'm assimilating the things today, I don't have any questions. It was very wonderful session, and thank you.
And okay, so now, Pawan Bhai, please.
I just briefly want to mention, and I think I'm grateful to Puneet for triggering off something in me, which I should have mentioned in my talk, which is that I think we miss out whenever we are talking about the political scenario, then we get into this right, left, and going back into the past and all, which is not possible. It's just not possible to go back to the past. And Dharampal is not talking about going to the past. Dharampal is not talking about glorifying the Indian civilization. No, he's talking about Indian civilization, but not to glorify it. he is saying that this is a fact that people can only stand on their roots, not on someone else's roots. It's not possible. So you have to acknowledge your own civilizational roots and get connected. It's being rooted is important. And then you create your own modernity. The modernity in which we are living today is not our modernity. When he says that we are living in someone else's world, in Bharti Chitmanaskal, he says repeatedly that we are living in someone else's world. That means precisely this, that we are disconnected with our roots and we are trying to live in a modernity which is connected with a different kind of a root. And it will never happen. So we will always be imitating. It doesn't matter left or right. Even the today's right comes from the same Western modernity, and today's left also comes from Western modernity. So what we are trying to do is to understand the falsity of modernity. And for that, the book that I begin with is Hind Swaraj. If you look at Gandhi's Hind Swaraj, he's talking of 5 systems there. He's talking of the education system. He's talking of the modern health system. He's talking of the modern judiciary system. He's talking of the modern technology, and he's talking of the modern governance system, means modern democracy. These 5 systems he spelled out and he's deconstructed them to show that they are what they profess, they are doing something completely opposite to what they profess. So what appears, what is seen, what is said, with the slogan mongering is completely different from the actuality. And this is true in every walk of life today. We don't even know who we are. And we are all the time, you look at the individual, you look at the collective, you look at the political scene, educated people are wearing a mask all the time. The mask could be of Marxism, the mask could be of liberalism, the mask could be of right conservatism, whatever it is, or the mask could be that I'm very smart or I'm very educated, etc., etc., etc. This is Western modernity. Never makes you, doesn't give you a chance to be authentic, doesn't even give you a chance to be sahaj, to be comfortable in your own skin. And this is what Dharampal is struggling with. He finds this in the ordinary Indian. He doesn't find it in the educated classes. So we don't even question today's democratic system, for instance, where you go for elections every 5 years, and then you say, oh, this development is all bad. But people want that development. You have first educated them. You have corrupted them through your education. You have given them false aspirations. And then the political party has left with no choice but to fulfill those, at least give the impression that we are filling your aspirations, which are false in the first place. So we have got caught in a kind of a web where there is no way out unless we challenge this modernity. And this modernity is not out there. This modernity is right here in our own perceptive minds. So this is what needs to be challenged. And just I'll finish here. What I am focusing today to understand modernity is one person who's, again, because we don't know our own great people, just like we don't know Dharampal. Very few people know Dharampal. Another great person that we don't know about is Professor A.K. Saran, Avadh Kishore Saran. I think he was one of the greatest minds of 20th century in the Kumar Swami lineage. No one knows about him. Very, very few people know about him. I think we are studying him very seriously to understand the falsity of modernity. And this is over here, as I said, it's nothing out there. It's over here, the way I perceive, the way I've created the assumptions that I don't even question. So this is where I think the work needs to start. And we have to get out of this left-right syndrome, and we have to get out of this political correctness kind of a thing that we are all scared people. We want to look politically correct. I challenge even those who claim to be liberals or leftists or who claim to be rightists. They are all, most of them, not all, but most of them are playing a role for an unknown other to appear to be what they want to appear. That's not authenticity. I will
So,
challenge that.
Thank you,
But we should
Pawan
have
bhai.
another session on that.
Thank you. Just for, is 5 minutes okay? Can you
Yeah.
spare another 5 minutes? We have
Sure.
some enriching participants with us very quickly. So Gyan Luigi,
Yes. Am I audible? Because I have some.
yes, yes.
I cannot make the video. Well, I am sorry. Well, I begin to speak. I hope the camera will function because in this moment I
No,
am not visible.
you
I'm
can
sorry.
just speak without the camera,
Yes.
please.
Well, no. Yes. Thank you very much. It was really enlightening. Well, I would say that I see some parallels, although the situation is different, but I see some parallels between the thought, the criticism of Dharampal against some behavior of the elite and the criticism which was exercised by Chittaranjan Das about the forms of education. That is, Chittaranjan many times says in his writings that the behavior of the elite is to ignore the traditions, to ignore intentionally the traditions of Odia, of Odisha, of the Adivasi, and to give the impulse to ignore the language, the very language of Odisha, and to cultivate the learning of Sanskrit. That is, elite want to go far from the traditions from the ordinary people. That is, the intention is to go against the traditions of the ordinary people in order to cultivate an artificial form of culture which is completely different from the traditions, and to cultivate in this sense, related to the criticism of Chittaranjan, the study of Sanskrit against the language of Odia. And I see some parallels with the behavior, the criticism of Dharampal against the elite who want to ignore the ordinary people and to go far from the ordinary people as much as possible. I see some, and I think it is something, a phenomenon which happens quite commonly when there is an elite which at every cost and with every price want to differentiate itself from the ordinary people. That is, the first thing is to adopt another language if it is possible, and anyway to have other traditions which are not related to the ordinary people, and to build a kind of artificial tradition in order to distantiate from the ordinary people. I think it is a phenomenon which in many countries has happened. The first parallel is with Chittarajan, but I think we can find very many analogies also in other countries. But anyway, thank you very much. It was really enlightening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gyan. And one linking thought, Pavanji, is that Gyan is referring to Chittaranjan Das, who is a contemporary of Dharampalji. He is born in 1923. He also took part in the freedom struggle. He was jailed, and he's a very devoted thinker. This is his centenary. So he has written and contributed deeply about many aspects of human condition. Now, very quick thought from Randhir, please.
No, I think we are very inspired by Pawan Gupta's understanding, and we just cultivate this legacy to bring the history as in its real sense. And I think somewhere Dharampalji also represents people's history, and that connotation is very, very important. because it gives a sense of identity which is very, very natural, very, very natural, and it really empowers the consciousness. And I am very inspired by Dharmpalji's writing, and the way he uh, inspired the legacy of Gandhi, Lohia, and Jayaprakash. And Jayaprakash Narayan was one of the inspired leaders of his thought, and somewhere I think Dharmpalji's idea of democracy is very close to Jayaprakash Narayan of Jayaprakash Narayan's idea of people's democracy. So people's history, people's democracy, and ultimately people's society. And knowledge is knowledge to science to technology. So I think some unique kind of emancipatory thought uh, uh, I can see, and this lecture is really a path-breaking lecture, which invites us to think rigorously and engage with the work of Dharampal. So thank you, Pawan. Thank you, Ananta bhai.
Thank you. And just 1 minute, Pawan Bhai, I want to introduce you to a very eager soul from Odisha. Jagat Jyoti, Tapu, please. Jagat Jyoti. Jagat Jyoti.
Thank you, everybody. Bhai, pranam. ମୁଁ ଏମିତି ଶୁଣୁଥିଲି କିନ୍ତୁ ବ୍ୟସ୍ତ ଥିଲି ମାର୍କେଟ ତ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଖାଲି ଶୁଣୁଛି ମୁଁ ଖାଲି।
So,
Thank you.
Pawan Bhai, our circle has friends from many different locations, and Tapu Jagat Jyoti, he stays in a village in Odisha, and many friends. So lovely. So any concluding thought from you, Pawan Bhai, before our humble vote of thanks?
I think, no, basically I would like to emphasize, one is that it's very, very, very important to understand modernity if we want to understand the Dharampal. Number two, we need to acknowledge the fact that all the Indian systems prior to British coming here were social systems. They were not imposed by any government. Today, all systems that we are living in, whether it's whichever government is there, these are different kind of systems. These are an imposition from the state. But the systems under which the beautiful tree is functioning is not a state-imposed system. It's a social system, samajik vyavastha. And this is a major departure. It's not possible today. We can't even imagine that we live in a society where we function under a societal systems. We can't even imagine. But if we want to compare, then we need to acknowledge that those systems are not under sponsored by or governed by the state. They are sort of run by the samaj. So they are samajic systems. And there's a world of a difference between the two. One is very, very rigid, and the other is very flexible. It is that if I can use two words about which we can talk another time, that the samajic systems are like a complex system, and the systems imposed by the state are like complicated systems. Complicated systems are like traffic lights, and complex systems are the way our body functions. If we eat something wrong, body has a mechanism to self-correct itself. This is a complex system. But traffic light, if traffic becomes more than what is normal, then traffic lights go for a fut and we have to do it manually. It has no self-correcting system. So samajic systems are complex systems. And that is what India has been functioning all these years till the British came here. And today we are living in complicated systems, a legacy from the Western world. Thank you.
Thank you. And one linking thought is that social system as complex system, and I think you are building creatively and you are training as an engineer. So the social system also is linked to the soul sphere. Therefore, in Indic way, the societal and the soul, they try to dance. And in Bharatiya Chittamana Kala, what Dharampal ji is saying that in some age it is dharma with 2 feet, 3 feet, the whole precarity of dharma. I think one important word challenge is to understand the precarity of dharma, and therefore the fragility of modernity. And let us look at the problem not only with modernity but also with tradition, with the critical perspective of the precarity of dharma. That dharma has become precarious. And so with this, let us continue our conversations. I request Minati to offer a few lines of thanks. Minati, please.
Thank you, Ananta bhai. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
I Minati Pradhan, on behalf of Swadhyasa Chakra and the Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Blossoming, would like to thank.
Please put your video and the vote of thanks if possible.
To our today's chief speaker, Mr. Pawan Gupta ji, for very informative and very enlightening session. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I would like to thank our moderator, today's moderator, and our mentor, Professor Kumar Giri, for giving us chance to learn different subjects every week. Thank you, Ananta bhai. I would like to thank Dr. Gita Dharampal ji for being present with us today. And I would like to thank Professor Ganlui ji, as usual, for his insight, very deep insight. Thank you so much. And I would also like to thank all the participants like Arundhati Jena, Puneet, Kumar, Sanjita, Bharti, and all for being so interactive today. At the last, not the least, I would like to thank our convener, Professor Randhir Kumar Gautam, for arranging and executing this webinar so well. Please pardon me if I have forgotten anybody's name. I would also like to thank all the Facebook users, Facebook platform user, and Zoom platform user, and being present with us and learning with us. Thank you all, and good night.